The Last Lighthouse Logbook Entry. The night settles over the coastline like a blanket being drawn across the world. The sky deepens from violet to indigo, and then to the softest black, scattered with stars that appear one by one, unhurried, certain. The ocean stretches endlessly beyond the rocks, its surface catching the last traces of twilight and holding them for just a moment before letting them fade completely away. The lighthouse stands where it has always stood, on its outcropping of ancient stone, surrounded by the patient sea. Its tower rises pale and steady against the darkening sky, weathered by decades of salt wind and spray, its paint worn smooth in some places, textured in others, a map of seasons and storms long past. The beam begins its rotation as the darkness deepens, sweeping across the water in its eternal arc, a gentle reminder of presence, of constancy, of light persisting through the night. Inside the tower, warmth glows from windows set into the thick stone walls. The light is amber, soft, the kind that comes from oil lamps and doesn't intrude upon the darkness, but rather makes a quiet agreement with it. The windows are small, their glass thick and slightly uneven, catching the lamplight and holding it there, making the lighthouse seem like a lantern itself, set upon the rocks to keep company with the greater light above. The keeper moves through the lower room with the practiced ease of someone who has performed these same actions countless times before. There is no hurry in the movements, no wasted motion. Each gesture is part of a rhythm established over years, a sequence as familiar as breathing. The keeper checks the supply of oil, runs a hand along the base of the lamp on the workbench, notes the even flame, the absence of smoke, the steady consumption of fuel that means everything is as it should be. The room smells of salt and oil, of wool and old wood, of the particular dampness that comes from living beside the sea. The stone walls hold the cool of the outside air, but the lamp provides enough warmth to make the space comfortable, habitable, a pocket of human presence within the vast indifference of rock and water. On the wall, a barometer hangs beside a thermometer, their brass casings polished from years of the keeper's hands checking them, noting the measurements, recording the slow changes in pressure and temperature that tell the story of the weather. A wooden table stands against one wall, its surface worn smooth and slightly concave in places where thousands of logbook entries have been written. The current logbook lies open there, its pages filled with neat handwriting, columns of numbers, brief observations written in a careful hand. The entries are identical in their format, varying only in the details they record: wind direction, visibility, sea conditions, the operation of the light. There is comfort in this sameness, in the knowledge that each night follows the same pattern, requires the same attention, the same small rituals of care and observation. The keeper pauses by the table, looking down at the last entry made that morning. The handwriting is steady, the information recorded with precision. Clear skies, light winds from the northwest, the lamp trimmed and burning well. Everything as it should be, everything in its place. The keeper's hand rests briefly on the page, feeling the slight texture of the paper, the ridges left by the pen's pressure, before moving on to the next task. Outside, the waves arrive against the rocks with a rhythm that never varies and yet is never quite the same. Each wave builds in the darkness, gathers itself from the mass of the ocean, and rolls forward to meet the land. The sound carries up to the lighthouse, muffled by the thick walls but persistent, a pulse that underlies everything, a heartbeat of water and stone that has continued for longer than human memory and will continue long after. The keeper crosses to the window and looks out at the night. The beam from the lighthouse sweeps past, illuminating a sector of ocean, making the water visible for just a moment before darkness returns. In that brief flash of light, the surface of the sea appears textured, constantly moving, the waves rolling in parallel lines toward the shore. Then the light passes, and there is only blackness again, and the sound of water, and the feeling of the tower standing firm against the wind. The wind has been steady all day, coming from the west, bringing with it the clean smell of the open ocean. It moves around the lighthouse now, finding the edges of the tower, pressing against the glass, making the smallest sound as it passes. Not a howl or a moan, but something gentler, a constant presence, a reminder that the air itself is always in motion, always traveling from somewhere to somewhere else, carrying weather and salt and the moisture of the sea. Time moves differently here, in the lighthouse, in the deep night. The clock on the wall ticks steadily, marking seconds and minutes and hours, but the measurements feel arbitrary, imposed upon something that exists outside of time. The rotation of the light above provides its own measurement. The sweep of the beam, the regular flash, the predictable arc across the darkness. The keeper knows this rhythm without thinking, can sense where the light is in its rotation, can feel the timing in the body, in the bones. There is much to do before the final logbook entry can be written, but there is no rush. The night stretches ahead, deep and quiet, and the tasks will unfold in their proper order, each one leading naturally to the next. The keeper moves to the base of the spiral staircase that winds up through the center of the tower, one hand resting on the iron railing worn smooth by generations of keepers before, all of whom climbed these same stairs, tended this same light, kept this same watch through the darkness. The stairs curve upward into shadow, each step slightly worn in the center where countless feet have passed. The keeper begins to climb, slowly, steadily, listening to the sound of footsteps on iron, the way the sound echoes in the enclosed space of the tower. The climb is long but not difficult, and there is no reason to hurry. Outside, the waves continue their patient work. Above, the light continues its rotation. Everything continues, everything persists, everything holds its place in the night. The spiral staircase winds upward through the body of the lighthouse, each turn revealing another small window set into the thick stone wall. Through these windows, glimpses of the night appear and disappear as the keeper climbs. A segment of starlit sky, a portion of dark ocean, the black silhouette of rocks below. The windows are narrow, designed more for light and air than for viewing, but they break the enclosed feeling of the stairwell and remind the climber that the tower is not separate from the world, but rather a part of it, a structure that rises from the rocks and participates in the wind and weather. The keeper pauses at one of these windows, not from fatigue but from habit, from the understanding that there is no urgency in reaching the top. The pause is part of the rhythm, a moment to listen, to notice, to let the body rest briefly before continuing. Through the window, the beam from the lighthouse sweeps past, and in its passage the keeper can see the texture of the wind on the water, the way it ruffles the surface in patterns that shift and change and shift again. The light moves on, and the view returns to darkness, but the image remains, printed on the eye, slowly fading. The air in the stairwell is cool and still, untouched by the wind that moves outside. The stone walls hold the temperature steady, neither warm nor cold, a neutral presence that feels solid and permanent. The keeper's hand slides along the railing as the climb continues, iron smooth beneath the palm, slightly cool anchoring. Each step produces a small sound that echoes briefly in the enclosed space before being absorbed by the stone. The rhythm of climbing becomes meditative, automatic, the body knowing the way without the mind needing to direct it. Higher up the tower, the windows become slightly larger, and the view expands. The keeper can see more of the coastline now, the dark curve of the land as it meets the sea, the white foam of waves breaking against rocks rendered visible by starlight and the periodic sweep of the lighthouse beam. There are no other lights visible anywhere, no houses, no ships, no signs of human presence beyond this single tower standing watch. The isolation feels not lonely but rather peaceful, a removal from the complications of the world, a simplification down to essential things: light, darkness, water, stone, wind. The keeper continues climbing, passing the small landing where supplies are stored, where extra oil sits in its sealed containers, where spare wicks wait in their protective boxes, where all the materials necessary for maintaining the light are kept organized and ready. Everything is in its place, each item positioned where it has always been, where it can be found without thought even in complete darkness. This order is not obsessive but necessary, born from the understanding that the light must never fail, that the mechanisms must always be tended, that reliability matters more than any other quality. Another turn of the stairs, another window, another pause. The keeper's breathing is even, unhurried, matching the pace of the climb. Outside, a gust of wind presses against the tower, and the keeper can feel the slightest movement in the structure, a barely perceptible flex that speaks to the strength of the stone and mortar, the way the lighthouse gives just slightly to the force of the wind rather than resisting rigidly. The tower has stood through countless storms, through winds far stronger than this gentle pressure, and it will stand through countless more, yielding just enough, remaining just firm enough, finding the balance that allows survival. The sound of the waves is louder here, higher in the tower, less muffled by the thick walls at the base. The keeper can hear the individual waves more clearly, can distinguish the larger ones from the smaller, can sense the rhythm of sets rolling in from far out at sea. The ocean never rests, never pauses, never stops its motion. Even on the calmest days, when the surface appears smooth as glass, the water is moving, rising and falling with the breath of the tides, responding to the pull of the moon, the rotation of the earth, forces so vast and fundamental that they can barely be comprehended. The keeper thinks of all the previous keepers who have climbed these stairs, night after night, year after year, decade after decade. Each one performing the same tasks, checking the same mechanisms, trimming the same lamp, writing similar entries in their own logbooks. The continuity is comforting, the sense of being part of something larger than a single life, a single span of years. The lighthouse was here before and will be here after, and the work of keeping the light burning is work that connects past and future through the present moment, through the simple act of climbing these stairs, checking the lamp, maintaining the vigil. Near the top of the staircase, the keeper pauses again, this time to look back down the way that has been climbed. The stairs spiral away into shadow, curving out of sight, leading back down to the lower room where the lamplight still glows steadily. The descent will come later, after the work is done, after the final check is made, after everything is confirmed to be in order. For now, there is only the upward movement, the continuation toward the light at the top of the tower. The temperature shifts slightly as the keeper approaches the lamp room. The space above is warmer, heated by the burning lamp, by the machinery of the rotation mechanism, by the contained energy of the light itself. The change is gradual, barely noticeable at first, but by the time the keeper reaches the final turn of the stairs, the air has become noticeably warmer, drier, carrying the smell of hot metal and burning oil, and the particular scent of the large lamp burning at full brightness. The keeper emerges into the watch room, a circular space just below the lamp room itself, where the windows are larger and the view expands to encompass the entire horizon. This is where the keeper sits during the long watches, where the chair is positioned to see both the ocean and the mechanisms above, where the logbook is sometimes brought to be written by the light of the lamp rather than by the smaller lamps below. The room is neat, spare, containing only what is necessary. The chair, a small table, a cabinet holding cleaning supplies and tools, a coat hanging on a hook for when the keeper must go outside onto the gallery that encircles the lamp room. The keeper crosses to one of the windows and looks out at the night. From this height, the view is expansive, overwhelming in its scope. The ocean stretches away in all directions, a vast darkness punctuated by the white of breaking waves, by the glitter of starlight on the moving surface, by the sweep of the lighthouse beam as it rotates above. The sky is dense with stars, more visible here away from any other lights, each one sharp and clear, the patterns of constellations familiar and unchanging. The wind is more present here, higher in the tower, no longer filtered by the bulk of the structure below. The keeper can hear it moving past the windows, can feel the slight draft that finds its way through the seals, can sense the pressure of it against the glass. But inside, in the watch room, there is still calm, still warmth, still the sense of being protected and safe while remaining connected to the wildness outside. Above, through the opening in the ceiling, the keeper can see the base of the lamp, the mechanisms of the rotation system, the massive lens that focuses and magnifies the light. The soft mechanical sound of the clockwork rotation mechanism is audible, a gentle clicking and whirring that is constant, reliable, soothing in its regularity. The lamp must be checked, the lens must be inspected, the oil level must be confirmed. These tasks await, and the keeper prepares to climb the final ladder into the lamp room itself, where the heart of the lighthouse burns steadily against the darkness. The ladder leading up into the lamp room is short, only a dozen rungs, but the keeper climbs it with the same deliberate care as the longer staircase below. Each hand finds its grip, each foot its placement, and the body moves upward with practiced certainty. The warmth increases with each rung, rising from the lamp that burns above, and by the time the keeper's head emerges into the lamp room itself, the air is noticeably warmer, almost embracing, a pocket of heat suspended at the top of the cold stone tower. The lamp room is smaller than the watch room below, its space dominated by the great lamp at its center and the enormous Fresnel lens that surrounds it. The lens is a marvel of glass and brass, composed of hundreds of individual prisms arranged in concentric rings, each one precisely angled to catch the light from the lamp and direct it outward in a focused beam. The glass is so clear it seems almost invisible in places, and yet it catches the lamplight and holds it, creating patterns of refraction and reflection that dance across the curved walls of the room. The keeper stands for a moment, simply observing, letting eyes adjust to the brightness after the relative dimness of the stairwell. The lamp burns at the center of the lens, its flame steady and even, fed by the oil reservoir below, the wick trimmed to exactly the right length to produce the maximum light with the minimum of smoke. The flame is not the simple flame of a candle or a household lamp, but something more substantial, more present, a concentrated burning that fills the lamp room with both light and heat. The rotation mechanism surrounds the base of the lens assembly, a system of gears and weights and cables that turns the entire lens apparatus at a constant, measured speed. The keeper can hear it working, the soft mechanical sound of metal moving against metal, of gears engaging and disengaging, of the slow descent of the weights that provide the power for the rotation. The sound is hypnotic, regular, a manufactured heartbeat that marks time as surely as the ticking of a clock. The keeper moves around the lamp, checking each element of the system with eyes and hands, a tactile inspection that confirms what vision alone cannot. The brass fittings are warm to the touch but not hot, indicating proper operation. The oil flows smoothly through its channels, visible through the glass reservoir, its level exactly where it should be for this hour of the night. The wick is evenly burned, showing no signs of charring or uneven consumption. Everything is as it should be. Everything is in balance. Outside the windows of the lamp room, the beam sweeps across the darkness, and from inside the keeper can watch its passage, can see the moment when the focused light shoots out across the water, bright enough to be visible for miles, a warning and a guide to any vessel that might be passing in the night. The beam moves with stately slowness, taking nearly a minute to complete its full rotation, giving any observer ample time to mark its passing, to note its rhythm, to use it as a reference point in the featureless darkness of the sea. The keeper takes a soft cloth from the pocket of the work coat and begins the nightly polishing of the lens. This is not strictly necessary. The lens was cleaned thoroughly that morning and shows no signs of salt spray or dust, but the ritual is important nonetheless, a way of maintaining connection with the mechanisms, of ensuring through touch and attention that everything remains in perfect condition. The cloth moves across the glass in small circles, barely touching, removing nothing visible but performing the action anyway, because the action itself matters. Each prism of the lens receives attention, from the largest rings at the center to the smallest at the top and bottom. The keeper moves slowly around the lamp, reaching up to clean the higher elements, bending down to tend to the lower ones, the body moving through familiar patterns, the muscles remembering the sequence without conscious thought. The glass is cool beneath the cloth despite the heat of the lamp, the prisms having dispersed and released the light that passes through them, holding only the faintest warmth. As the keeper works, the light continues its rotation, and shadows move across the curved walls of the lamp room, patterns of brightness and darkness that shift and flow like water. The effect is dreamlike, hypnotic, and the keeper has learned to work within this environment without being distracted by the constant motion of light and shadow. The focus remains on the task, on the section of lens currently being polished, on the quality of the surface beneath the cloth. Outside, the wind continues its passage around the tower, and from this height, from inside the lamp room, the keeper can hear it more clearly, can distinguish the different tones it makes as it encounters the various surfaces of the lighthouse. There is the deeper sound as it strikes the solid curve of the tower itself, the higher pitch as it moves past the windows, the complex harmonics as it wraps around the gallery railing outside. The wind is playing the lighthouse like an instrument, creating a music that is always present, always varying slightly, never quite the same from one moment to the next. The keeper completes the circuit of the lens and returns the polishing cloth to its pocket. Now comes the check of the rotation mechanism, a more technical task that requires attention to the specific components of the system. The keeper kneels beside the base of the lens assembly, where the gears are visible through their protective housing, and watches their movement, listening for any irregularity in the sound, any hesitation or catching in the smooth transfer of motion from one gear to the next. The gears turn with perfect regularity, each tooth engaging its partner at precisely the right moment, the lubrication sufficient to allow smooth movement without excess, the bearings showing no signs of wear or binding. The weights that power the system hang down through the center of the tower on their cables, descending slowly as they release their stored energy, turning that potential into the kinetic energy of rotation. The keeper notes their position, calculating mentally how much longer they will continue to provide power before needing to be rewound, and determines that there is no need to attend to them tonight. They will continue their descent until morning, when the light is extinguished and the weights can be cranked back to the top of their travel. The keeper stands again and moves to the windows, looking out at the world from this highest point of the lighthouse. The view is extraordinary, even after years of seeing it night after night. The ocean extends to the horizon in every direction, invisible as a surface but present as a vast darkness, a negative space defined by the absence of stars in the lower half of the view. The waves are visible only when they break, white foam catching starlight and the sweeping beam, appearing suddenly and then vanishing again into the general darkness. Far out on the water, there might be ships passing, their lights invisible from this distance, their crews going about their own routines, standing their own watches, marking time through their own night. The keeper thinks of them occasionally, these unknown mariners, and feels a connection to them, a shared participation in the work of moving through darkness, of maintaining vigilance, of keeping systems functioning through the long hours when most of the world is sleeping. But tonight, there are no ships visible, no lights moving against the darkness, no signs of any presence other than the lighthouse itself and the keeper within it. The solitude is complete, but not oppressive. There is something restful in being the only watcher, the only light, the only human consciousness engaged with this particular stretch of coast, this particular sweep of ocean. The responsibility is clear, undivided, and there is satisfaction in that clarity. The keeper checks the lamp one final time, leaning close to observe the flame, noting the slight shimmer in the air above it where the heat rises, watching for any flutter or unsteadiness that might indicate a problem with the oil flow or the wick. But the flame is perfect, burning with the steady intensity that it will maintain until morning, when the keeper will return to extinguish it, trim the wick, refill the oil, and prepare it for the next night's burning. The work in the lamp room is complete. Everything has been checked, everything confirmed to be in proper order, everything tended and observed and found satisfactory. The keeper takes one more long look around the room, a final survey that is both practical and something more, a moment of appreciation for the machinery, for the light, for the elegant simplicity of a system designed to do one thing perfectly: to burn steadily through the darkness, to warn and guide, to persist. The descent of the short ladder back to the watch room is slower than the climb, the keeper's body now warm from the heat of the lamp room, the cooler air of the watch room rising to meet the descent. By the time feet touch the floor of the watch room again, the temperature has shifted, become more moderate, more comfortable for remaining and resting. The keeper crosses to the chair by the window and sits, allowing the body to settle, to release the small tensions of climbing and working, to prepare for the final task of the night, the writing of the logbook entry. The chair in the watch room is simple but sturdy, its wooden frame worn smooth by years of use, its seat conforming to the shape of the keeper over countless hours of sitting and watching and waiting. The keeper settles into it with a sense of familiarity, the body knowing exactly how to arrange itself for comfort, how to find the position that can be maintained for long periods without strain or discomfort. The chair faces the largest window, providing a view of the ocean and the sweeping beam above, but positioned so that the keeper can also see the opening to the lamp room, can monitor the mechanisms without needing to move. From this seat, the keeper has watched countless nights unfold, has observed the progression of weather systems across the sky, has marked the changing positions of stars through the seasons, has seen the moon rise and set in all its phases. The view is never exactly the same twice, and yet it is always fundamentally similar, a constant theme with endless subtle variations. Tonight the stars are particularly clear, sharp points of light scattered across the darkness with a density that makes the sky seem almost crowded, almost too full of light. The keeper sits quietly, simply breathing, letting the mind settle after the activity of climbing and checking and polishing. There is no need to rush toward the next task. The night is deep and will remain deep for hours yet. The logbook waits below, but it can wait a while longer. For now, there is only the sitting, the watching, the listening to the sounds that fill the watch room, the mechanical rhythm of the rotation mechanism above, the wind moving past the windows, the distant sound of waves against the rocks, the occasional creak of the tower itself as it flexes minutely in response to wind and temperature. The keeper's breathing slows to match the rhythm of the waves, each breath drawn in as a wave builds somewhere in the darkness, each breath released as the wave breaks against the rocks below. The synchronization is unconscious, automatic, a way the body has of aligning itself with the larger rhythms of the environment, of becoming part of the pattern rather than separate from it. In this state, the boundary between the keeper and the lighthouse, between the lighthouse and the ocean, between the ocean and the night becomes less distinct, less important. Time passes, though exactly how much is difficult to say. The keeper exists in a space between waking and sleeping, not drowsy but rather deeply relaxed, alert but without tension, present but without the usual stream of thoughts that normally fills consciousness. This is a state that comes easily here in the lighthouse, in the deep night, when there is nothing to do but maintain presence, maintain awareness, maintain the watch. It is restful in a way that sleep is not, because there is no surrender of consciousness, only a quieting of it, a simplification. The beam sweeps past the window again and again, each passage a marker of time, a measure of continuity. The keeper watches it without counting, without marking any particular sweep as significant, allowing them all to flow together into a single sustained experience of light moving through darkness. The lens above is performing its function perfectly, gathering the light of the lamp and projecting it outward, creating a beam that reaches miles into the night, that can be seen from distances so great that the lighthouse itself would be invisible, that provides orientation and warning and reassurance to anyone who might need it. The keeper thinks, not for the first time, about the nature of light, about the way it travels outward in all directions unless constrained and focused, about the way the lens captures and directs it, about the purpose of making something visible that would otherwise be hidden in darkness. The lighthouse does not create safety. The rocks are still there, the currents still dangerous, the storms still powerful, but it creates knowledge, and knowledge allows navigation, allows choice, allows those at sea to know where they are in relation to the land. This seems important somehow, this distinction between safety and knowledge, between protection and guidance. The lighthouse cannot protect vessels from the sea, but it can help them protect themselves, can provide the information they need to make their own decisions, to chart their own courses. The light is neutral, impartial, always present for anyone who might need it, asking nothing in return except that it be maintained, that the lamp be tended, that the lens be kept clean, that the mechanisms be kept in working order. The keeper shifts slightly in the chair, adjusting position, and looks down through the watchroom floor toward the lower levels of the lighthouse. The warm glow from the room below is visible, a softer, more intimate light than the powerful beam above. That is where the logbook waits, where the desk stands ready, where the final entry of this night will be written. But there is no urgency about it, no pressure to complete the task immediately. The entry will be written when the keeper returns below, after this period of sitting and watching and being present with the night. Outside, a bank of clouds moves across a portion of the sky, blotting out some of the stars, changing the texture of the darkness. The keeper watches their progress, noting how they are moving from west to east, pushed by the prevailing wind, noting their height and density and speed. These are not storm clouds, not the heavy, dark masses that bring rain and rough seas, but rather the high, thin clouds that often pass through on clear nights, barely visible except where they obscure the stars. They will continue their eastward journey, will move inland, will eventually dissipate or evolve into something else, part of the endless circulation of air and moisture that creates weather. The beam sweeps through the clouds, and for a moment its passage is visible, the light scattering through the water droplets suspended in the air, creating a pale column of illumination that extends upward and outward before fading. The effect lasts only seconds, visible for the duration of the beam's passage through that particular sector of sky, and then it is gone, the beam continuing its rotation, the clouds continuing their drift, everything continuing in its appointed pattern. The keeper rises from the chair slowly, allowing the body to unfold from its resting position, feeling the slight stiffness that comes from sitting still for an extended period. There is a brief pause to look once more around the watchroom, to confirm that everything remains as it should be, and then the keeper moves toward the opening in the floor, toward the ladder that leads back down to the spiral staircase, beginning the descent that will lead eventually to the lower room, to the desk, to the logbook waiting there. The descent is slower than the climb, as descents always are, requiring more attention to foot placement, more care with each step. The keeper's hand finds the smooth railing again, slides along its length, providing balance and security. The temperature gradually cools as the distance from the lamp room increases, the air becoming more neutral, less influenced by the heat of the burning lamp above. The sound of the rotation mechanism fades, becoming just one element among many in the complex soundscape of the lighthouse, wind, waves, the creak of wood and metal, the keeper's own breathing and footfalls. At each small window, the keeper pauses briefly, looking out at the night, noting any changes in the conditions. The clouds have advanced across more of the sky now, covering perhaps a quarter of the visible stars, their edges soft and undefined against the surrounding darkness. The wind seems steady, unchanging in its strength or direction. The waves continue their rhythmic arrival against the rocks, their sound a constant presence that has become so familiar it is almost inaudible, noticed only when attention is specifically directed toward it. The keeper continues downward, passing the landing where the supplies are stored, passing the higher windows, spiraling down through the body of the tower. The descent has its own meditation, its own rhythm, different from the upward climb but equally absorbing, equally capable of quieting the mind into a state of simple presence. Each step is the same, each turn of the stair predictable, and yet the experience remains engaging, remains present, because attention is being paid, because the keeper is not simply moving through space but rather experiencing the movement, feeling it in muscles and joints, hearing it in the echo of footsteps, seeing it in the changing views through the windows. Near the bottom of the staircase, the warm glow from the lower room becomes visible, the lamplight spilling up through the opening, creating a welcoming illumination that beckons the keeper downward. The quality of this light is different from the powerful beam above, softer, more diffuse, more suitable for close work and detailed attention. This is the light by which the logbook will be written, by which the keeper's hand will form letters and numbers, by which the final entry of this night will be recorded. The keeper's feet touch the floor of the lower room, completing the descent, returning to the starting point of the climb. The room is exactly as it was left, unchanged, patient, waiting. The lamp on the workbench continues to burn steadily, its flame moving only slightly in the air currents that move through the space. The logbook lies open on the table, its pages slightly yellowed by the lamplight, the last entry still visible, still recording the observations of that morning when the light was extinguished and the day began. The keeper crosses to the table and stands beside it for a moment, looking down at the logbook, at the columns waiting to be filled, at the blank space where tonight's entry will be written. The pen rests in its holder, the ink bottle sits nearby, everything arranged and ready for the work of recording, of documenting, of creating the official account of this night's watch. But before the writing begins, there is one more task, one more check to be performed, one more element of the routine to be completed. The keeper moves to the outer door of the lighthouse, a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron straps, its surface weathered by salt and wind but still solid, still performing its function of sealing the interior from the elements. The keeper's hand finds the latch, lifts it with a soft metallic click, and pulls the door open. The wind enters immediately, not rushing but flowing, bringing with it the full sound of the waves, the smell of the ocean, the cool touch of night air that has traveled across miles of open water. The keeper steps outside onto the small platform at the base of the lighthouse, where the stone of the tower meets the rock of the island. The change from the enclosed warmth of the interior to the open coolness of the exterior is striking, refreshing, a reminder of the larger world that exists beyond the walls. The wind moves across the keeper's face, steady and clean, carrying no hint of rain or storm, just the pure essence of air that has been purified by its long journey across the sea. Above, the beam sweeps past, and in its passage the keeper can see the entire landscape illuminated for a brief moment. The rocks extending down to the water, the white foam of breaking waves, the texture of the wind on the ocean's surface, the solid mass of the lighthouse tower rising into the darkness. Then the light moves on, and the keeper's eyes adjust again to the dimmer illumination of starlight, sufficient to see shapes and movements but not details, not colors, not the fine textures that daylight or the beam reveal. The keeper walks slowly around the base of the tower, following the worn path that circles the lighthouse, a route walked countless times on countless nights, the stones underfoot familiar to the point of being mapped in muscle memory. This circuit is part of the routine, a way of checking the exterior of the structure, of noting any changes or damage, of simply being present with the physical reality of the lighthouse as a thing in the world, subject to the same forces of weather and time as everything else. The rocks beneath the keeper's feet are ancient, formed long before there were humans to build lighthouses upon them, shaped by forces of unimaginable power and duration. They are granite, hard and resistant to erosion, which is why this particular point was chosen for the lighthouse, why it has stood here for so many decades without the foundation shifting or settling. The keeper can feel their solidity through the soles of worn boots, can sense the absolute stability they provide, the way they anchor the lighthouse to the earth itself. The sound of the waves is louder out here, unfiltered by walls or glass, arriving directly from their source. The keeper pauses on the seaward side of the tower, facing out toward the darkness where the waves originate, and listens to the pattern of their arrival. There are the smaller waves, arriving frequently, breaking with a softer sound against the rocks. And there are the larger waves, arriving less often, part of sets that roll in from distant storms or disturbances, breaking with more force, sending spray higher up the rocks, their sound deeper and more resonant. The keeper can predict the arrival of the larger waves by listening to the pattern, by noting the intervals between them, by feeling the rhythm that underlies their apparent randomness. This skill has developed over time, born from countless hours of listening and observing, from the need to know when to expect the spray, when to be cautious on the rocks, when to secure things that might be affected by particularly powerful waves. Tonight the waves are moderate, predictable, presenting no concerns, but the keeper listens anyway, maintaining the awareness, keeping the skill active. The wind shifts slightly, coming now from a point slightly north of west, and the keeper notes this change, files it away in memory for when the logbook entry is written. Wind direction matters, influences everything from the behavior of the waves to the amount of salt spray that might accumulate on the lens, from the rate at which the lamp consumes oil to the temperature inside the tower. The keeper has learned to be sensitive to these shifts, to notice them immediately, to understand their implications without needing to think through the connections consciously. Above, the stars continue their slow rotation around the celestial pole, imperceptibly moving through their nightly journey across the sky. The keeper has learned many of the constellations over the years, knows them by name and shape, can locate particular stars that serve as navigation aids, can estimate the time by their positions. But tonight the keeper simply observes them without naming, appreciating them as points of light in the darkness, as companions in the night, as reminders that the lighthouse is not the only light in existence, merely one among countless lights scattered through space and time. The beam sweeps past again, and the keeper watches its progress across the water, sees how far it reaches, how clearly it defines its sector of responsibility. The light is strong tonight, the air clear enough that there is little scattering or diffusion, the beam maintaining its focused intensity even at the limit of its range. This is good, this is optimal performance, and the keeper feels the quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing the mechanisms are working as they should, that the light is fulfilling its purpose. The keeper completes the circuit of the tower and returns to the door, pausing once more to look out at the night before going inside. The ocean is vast, the sky is vast, and the keeper is small within this vastness, the lighthouse is small, and yet there is no feeling of insignificance, no sense of being diminished by the scale. Instead there is a feeling of rightness, of being exactly where one should be, doing exactly what should be done, participating in something larger than oneself without being lost in it. The keeper steps back inside and pulls the door closed, securing the latch, sealing out the wind and the sound of the waves, returning to the enclosed quiet of the lower room. The lamp still burns steadily on the workbench, its light seeming brighter now after the darkness outside, more welcoming, more homelike. The keeper removes the work coat and hangs it on its hook beside the door, then crosses to the table where the logbook waits. The chair at the table is different from the chair in the watch room above, harder, more upright, designed for work rather than for long periods of observation. The keeper pulls it out and sits, adjusting position until comfortable, until the posture feels right for the task of writing. The logbook lies open, its pages showing the accumulated entries of many nights, a record of routine and constancy, of small variations within an unchanging framework. The keeper opens the ink bottle, its glass cool to the touch, its contents dark and liquid, moving slightly as the bottle is tilted. The pen is lifted from its holder, a simple wooden pen with a steel nib, worn to fit the keeper's hand precisely, responsive to pressure and angle in ways that have become intuitive over years of use. The nib is touched to the ink, absorbing just enough to write several lines without reloading, and then the pen is positioned above the page, above the empty space where tonight's entry will be recorded. But the keeper does not write immediately. There is a pause, a moment of gathering, of bringing together all the observations and checks and sensations of the night into a form that can be expressed in words and numbers, that can be reduced to the simple categories the logbook requires. The format is standardized, the same for every entry, but each entry is unique in its details, in the specific conditions it records, in the particular configuration of wind and weather and sea state that existed on this particular night. The keeper's eyes move to the instruments on the wall: the barometer, the thermometer, the clock. The barometer reads high and steady, indicating continuing fair weather. The thermometer shows the temperature as cool but not cold, typical for this season, this time of night. The clock shows the late hour, the deep part of the night when most of the world is sleeping, but when the lighthouse keeps its unwavering vigil. The keeper looks once more at the lamp burning on the workbench, at the steady flame that provides the light for writing, and then at the logbook page, at the columns and spaces waiting to be filled. The pen touches the paper, the nib making contact with the fibers, and the first letter begins to form, the ink flowing from nib to page, dark against the light background, permanent once written, becoming part of the permanent record of the lighthouse, of this night of the keeper's watch. The sound of the pen moving across paper is soft, almost soothing, a scratching whisper that joins the other sounds of the room. The breathing of the keeper, the slight hiss of the lamp, the distant sound of waves that penetrates even through the thick walls. The letters form slowly, carefully, each one distinct and legible, each word complete before the next begins. There is no hurry, no sense of rushing to complete the task. The writing itself is meditative, each stroke of the pen requiring attention, requiring presence, requiring the hand to perform its movements with precision and care. The date is written first, the numbers formed with particular care, each digit clear and unmistakable. The keeper has seen old logbooks where dates were written hastily, where numbers could be confused with each other, where the record became ambiguous and unreliable. This will not happen here, not during this watch. Each number is given the time it needs, the attention it deserves, so that anyone reading this entry in the future, whether tomorrow or decades from now, will know with certainty exactly when these observations were made. The pen lifts from the page and returns to the ink bottle, touching the surface of the liquid, drawing up more ink for the next section. The time is recorded next, the hour and minute when the observations were taken, when the keeper made the circuit of the exterior, when the conditions were noted and assessed. The clock on the wall is consulted once more to ensure accuracy, and the numbers are written with the same careful precision as the date. Next comes the wind direction, and the keeper pauses to recall the feeling of the wind outside, the way it touched the face and moved around the tower, the subtle shift that was noticed during the circuit. The entry reads, west-northwest, the words written in full rather than abbreviated, following the practice established by previous keepers, maintaining the tradition of clarity over brevity. The wind strength is added, moderate, steady, a description that captures both the force of the wind and its consistency, its lack of gusting or variability. The keeper's hand moves steadily across the page, filling in each required field, each category of observation. The sea state is recorded, moderate swell, waves breaking regularly on rocks, no unusual conditions observed. This is the language of the logbook, factual and descriptive, avoiding interpretation or emotion, simply stating what was observed, what exists at this particular moment in this particular place. The barometer reading is copied from the instrument on the wall, the numbers transferred carefully to the page, the decimal point precisely placed. The reading is high, indicating stable atmospheric pressure, suggesting that the fair weather will continue. The keeper notes this without recording any prediction. The logbook deals in observations, not forecasts, in what is rather than what might be. The thermometer reading follows, the temperature recorded in degrees, another piece of data that helps to build the complete picture of the night's conditions. The visibility is noted next, and here the keeper's experience comes into play, the judgment developed over years of watching the sea and sky, of learning to estimate distances in darkness, of understanding how far the beam reaches and what can be seen within its sweep. Tonight the visibility is excellent, the air clear and dry, the beam reaching its full design distance without significant diffusion or scattering. The keeper writes, visibility excellent, horizon clearly visible during beam passage, stars bright and numerous. The condition of the lamp is recorded in its own section of the entry, a category that receives particular attention because it concerns the primary function of the lighthouse itself. The keeper writes, lamp burning steadily, wick trimmed and even, oil consumption normal, no smoke or irregularities observed. This simple statement represents hours of careful tending, of maintaining the mechanisms, of ensuring that every element of the lighting system is functioning as designed. The words are few, but they encompass the essential work of the keeper, the core responsibility that underlies everything else. The rotation mechanism receives its own entry, clockwork operating smoothly, gears properly lubricated, beam maintaining steady rotation at prescribed interval. Again, the brevity of the statement belies the importance of what it documents, the confirmation that the light is not merely burning, but is also sweeping across its designated arc, is fulfilling its function of warning and guidance, is doing what it was designed to do. The keeper pauses in the writing, the pen held above the page, and listens to the sounds of the lighthouse. Everything is as it should be. The lamp burns, the lens focuses, the mechanism rotates, the beam sweeps outward into the darkness. The wind moves around the tower, the waves break against the rocks, the night continues its deep passage toward dawn. All of these things are happening as they have happened countless times before, as they will happen countless times again, a pattern that extends backward and forward through time. The pen returns to the page, and the keeper adds a note about the lens condition. Lens cleaned and inspected, all prisms clear, no salt deposits or foreign matter observed. This is routine, expected, but it is recorded nonetheless because the logbook is a complete record, a document that accounts for all aspects of the lighthouse operation, not just the unusual or noteworthy, but also the routine and expected. The absence of problems is as important to document as their presence, because it establishes the baseline, the standard against which any future deviations can be measured. The keeper adds a brief note about the exterior inspection. Tower structure sound, no damage observed, drainage clear, all external fittings secure. The circuit of the tower, the walk around the base in the wind and darkness, is reduced to this single line, but the line carries weight because it represents a thorough examination, a careful attention to the physical condition of the structure itself. The lighthouse is more than just the lamp and lens. It is also the tower that elevates them, the foundation that supports them, the walls that protect them from the elements. There is a section for noting any vessels sighted, any ships passing within view of the lighthouse, any indication of activity on the sea. Tonight this section remains empty. The keeper writes, "No vessels observed," the words simple and factual, neither disappointed nor relieved at the solitude, simply recording the reality of the night. There are nights when ships pass, when their lights are visible in the distance, when the keeper knows that the beam is being used, is providing guidance, is fulfilling its purpose in a direct and immediate way. And there are nights like this one, when the sea is empty of human traffic, when the light shines for the principle of it, for the reliability of it, for the promise that it will always be there when needed. The keeper's hand pauses again, and eyes lift from the page to look around the room. The lamp on the workbench continues its steady burning. The instruments on the wall maintain their quiet observation of temperature and pressure. The logbook itself, with its many pages of previous entries, sits solid and substantial on the table, a physical manifestation of continuity, of the accumulated nights and watches that have brought the lighthouse to this particular moment. Outside, the wind can be heard moving past the walls, and the waves continue their patient work against the rocks. Above, the beam continues its rotation, sweeping across sectors of ocean that may be empty or may contain vessels too distant to see, providing its warning and guidance regardless, constant and impartial and reliable. The keeper is aware of all of this, is holding it all in consciousness while writing, while reducing the night to marks on paper, while creating the official record that will outlast the night itself. The pen touches the page again, and the keeper adds a final observation. Weather conditions stable, no change anticipated before dawn. This is as close as the logbook comes to looking forward, to moving beyond pure observation into gentle prediction, and it is phrased carefully, tentatively, acknowledging the limits of human ability to foresee what the atmosphere might do, what changes might arise from the complex interactions of temperature and pressure and moisture that create weather. The entry is nearly complete now, nearly ready to be signed and dated, to be made official. But the keeper pauses, reading back over what has been written, checking for accuracy, for clarity, for any omissions or errors that might compromise the record. The habit of double-checking is deeply ingrained, born from the knowledge that once the entry is complete, once it is signed and the page is turned, it becomes permanent, becomes part of the historical record of the lighthouse that may be consulted by future keepers, by inspectors, by anyone who needs to know what happened on this particular night. The keeper's eyes move slowly across the lines of writing, following each word, each number, verifying that everything is as it should be. The handwriting is steady and clear, the numbers unambiguous, the descriptions accurate and appropriate. There are no corrections needed, no additions to be made, no errors to be rectified. The entry is complete and correct, a faithful representation of the night's conditions and observations, a worthy addition to the long record of nights that the logbook contains. The keeper dips the pen once more, gathering ink for the final act of signing the entry. The signature will be the same as it has been on every entry, a familiar pattern of loops and lines that identifies the keeper, that takes responsibility for the observations recorded, that says, "I was here, I watched, I tended the light, and this is what I found." The pen moves across the page, forming the letters of the name, the signature that makes the entry official and complete. The signature is complete, the final flourish of the pen leaving its mark on the page. The keeper sets the pen carefully in its holder, the nib pointing upward, allowing any excess ink to settle back toward the tip. The ink on the page is still wet, still dark and glistening in the lamplight, and the keeper knows to let it dry before closing the book, before adding this night to the compressed layers of previous nights that make up the logbook's thickness. While the ink dries, the keeper sits quietly at the table, hands resting palm down on the smooth wood surface, feeling its solidity, its coolness, its patient presence. The table has been here for as long as the keeper has tended the lighthouse, and likely for many years before that, its surface bearing the marks of countless logbook entries, countless moments like this one when a keeper sat and wrote and waited for ink to dry. The room is very quiet now. The act of writing has created a kind of stillness, a settling of attention and energy that leaves the space feeling even more peaceful than before. The keeper's breathing is slow and even, barely audible, synchronized once again with the distant rhythm of the waves. The lamp flame moves only slightly, drawing its steady supply of oil, converting it to light and heat with the quiet efficiency of a well-maintained system. The keeper's gaze moves around the room, taking in the familiar objects that populate this space. There is the cabinet against one wall, its doors closed, containing the supplies needed for the daily operation of the lighthouse: extra wicks, cleaning materials, oil for the lamps, tools for minor repairs. There is the small stove in the corner, cold now but ready to provide heat when needed during the colder months. There is the narrow bed against the far wall, used sometimes during long watches, during storms when it is not practical to leave the lighthouse, during the times when the keeper remains here for days at a stretch. Each object has its place, its purpose, its role in the life of the lighthouse. Nothing is superfluous, nothing is merely decorative. Everything that exists in this room exists because it serves a function, because it contributes to the operation of the light or to the welfare of the keeper. This simplicity is restful, is clarifying, removes the need to navigate through complexity or to make unnecessary choices. Life in the lighthouse is reduced to essentials, and there is peace in that reduction. The keeper reaches forward and touches the edge of the logbook page, testing the ink. It is still slightly damp, not yet ready to be covered by the next page, not yet ready for the book to be closed. The keeper withdraws the hand and settles back into the chair, willing to wait, understanding that some things cannot be hurried, that ink dries at its own pace regardless of human impatience or desire. Outside, the night continues its slow progression toward morning, though dawn is still many hours away. The keeper is aware of the time, aware of where this moment sits within the larger arc of the night, but there is no sense of waiting for dawn, no anticipation of the light's arrival. The night is complete in itself, sufficient unto itself, not merely an absence of day but a presence in its own right, with its own qualities, its own particular beauty. The beam sweeps past the window, its passage visible as a brightening, and then a dimming of the light that enters the lower room. The keeper watches this happen, has watched it happen thousands of times, will watch it happen thousands of times more, and each time it is somehow new, somehow worthy of attention, somehow miraculous in its regularity and precision. The light goes out, sweeps across miles of ocean, and returns, all in the span of less than a minute, and then the cycle begins again. The keeper thinks about all the previous keepers who have sat in this room, at this table, writing in their own logbooks, recording their own observations of wind and weather and sea state. They are gone now, those keepers, passed into history, but their logbooks remain, stored somewhere in some archive, preserving their careful notations, their attention to detail, their participation in the long tradition of tending lights along the coast. The keeper feels connected to them across time, joined by the shared experience of watching darkness, of maintaining light, of serving the essential function that the lighthouse provides. There is comfort in this continuity, in being part of something that extends backward through generations and forward into an unknown but assumed future. The lighthouse was here before the keeper arrived, and will be here after the keeper departs. The light will continue to burn, tended by other hands, watched over by other eyes, serving the same purpose it has always served. The keeper is temporary, but the lighthouse and its function are, if not eternal, then at least enduring, persisting through the changes that affect individual lives. The keeper reaches forward again and tests the ink. It is dry now, no longer glistening, no longer able to smudge or transfer. The page can be safely turned, the entry can be completed. But the keeper does not close the book immediately. Instead, the page is left open, the entry visible in the lamplight, the record of this night still present and readable rather than compressed between other pages, hidden within the thickness of the book. The keeper stands slowly, stretching muscles that have been still during the sitting and writing, feeling the small adjustments as the body reconfigures itself for standing rather than sitting. There is no stiffness, no discomfort, only the pleasant sensation of movement after stillness, of the body responding to intention, of the ability to move freely and without pain. The keeper crosses to the window and looks out at the darkness, at the barely visible shapes of rocks below, at the greater darkness of the ocean beyond. The stars are still bright, though some have moved noticeably across the sky since the beginning of the watch. The clouds that were advancing from the west have covered perhaps half the sky now, their edges still soft and undefined, their presence changing the quality of the darkness without bringing any threat of storm or precipitation. They are simply there, part of the night's character, part of the conditions that exist at this particular time in this particular place. The keeper can see, in the periodic flash of the beam, how the wind continues to move across the water's surface, creating patterns that shift and flow and never repeat exactly. The waves continue to arrive against the rocks, their rhythm unchanged, their persistence absolute. They have been arriving like this for longer than there has been a lighthouse to mark them, longer than there have been humans to observe them, and they will continue long after both lighthouse and humans are gone. The ocean is patient beyond human comprehension, working on timescales that make individual lives seem like brief flickers, like sparks that appear and vanish in an instant. And yet the keeper does not feel diminished by this perspective, does not feel the existential weight that such awareness might bring. Instead, there is a kind of peace in understanding one's place in the larger order of things, in accepting the temporary nature of individual existence, while participating in patterns that are vastly longer lasting. The lighthouse is one such pattern, a human creation designed to outlast its creators, to serve a function that will remain necessary as long as ships sail and coasts exist and darkness falls. The keeper turns from the window and returns to the table, looking down at the logbook entry one final time. The words are clear, the observations accurate, the record complete. Everything that needed to be documented has been documented. Everything that needed to be checked has been checked. The work of this night is done, or nearly done, with only the remaining hours of darkness to be watched, to be observed, to be lived through with attention and care. The keeper reaches forward and gently turns the page of the logbook, covering the fresh entry with the blank page that follows. The book is not closed, not yet, but the entry is now protected, no longer exposed to the air, no longer at risk of being smudged or damaged. It has joined the long record of entries that preceded it, has become part of the accumulated documentation of the lighthouse's operation, of the keeper's vigilance, of the endless succession of nights when the light burned and someone watched over it. The keeper moves to the small stove and checks its condition, though it is not currently in use. The habit of checking extends to everything in the lighthouse, not just the lamp and lens, not just the mechanisms of illumination, but all the systems and structures that support life here, that make it possible to remain through the long watches, through the storms, through the isolation. The stove is clean, its chimney clear, its fuel supply adequate. Like everything else in the lighthouse, it is ready to serve when needed, maintained even when not in use, cared for as part of the comprehensive attention that the keeper brings to all things. The lamp on the workbench has burned down slightly, its flame a fraction smaller than it was at the beginning of the watch, but it still provides ample light, still fills the room with its warm glow. The keeper checks the oil level in its reservoir and determines that it will last until morning without needing to be refilled. This small lamp, like the great lamp above, is tended with care, is never allowed to fail, is maintained in a state of reliable operation. The keeper's responsibility extends to all lights in the lighthouse, from the greatest to the smallest, from the beam that reaches miles to the flame that illuminates a single room. The keeper crosses to the cabinet and opens its doors, surveying the contents with a practiced eye. Everything is in order, each item in its designated place, each supply adequate for the needs of the coming days. There are spare wicks wrapped in protective paper, their cotton fibers clean and ready for use. There are bottles of oil, sealed and waiting, their contents ready to feed the lamps when the current supplies run low. There are cleaning cloths, neatly folded, and polishing compounds in small containers, and tools for adjusting mechanisms and tightening fittings. The keeper's hand moves along the shelves, not touching but hovering just above the items, performing a visual inventory, confirming that nothing is missing, nothing is running low, nothing needs to be ordered or replaced. This checking is habitual, performed not because there is any reason to believe something might be wrong, but because thoroughness is the foundation of reliability, because small problems are best caught before they become large ones, because vigilance is not something that can be turned on and off but must be maintained constantly, must become a way of being rather than a task that is performed. The cabinet doors are closed again, their simple latch clicking softly into place. The keeper pauses in the center of the room, simply standing, simply being present, allowing the mind to settle into a state of quiet alertness, of relaxed attention. There is nothing that requires doing at this moment, nothing that demands immediate action, and so there is space for simply existing, for experiencing the lighthouse not as a set of systems to be maintained, but as a place, as an environment, as a location where life unfolds in its particular way. The keeper becomes aware of the body's sensations, the weight of feet on the floor, the feeling of clothing against skin, the slight coolness of the air against the face, the warmth that radiates from the lamp on the workbench. These sensations are always present, always available to attention, but they are usually background, noticed only peripherally while the mind focuses on tasks and observations. Now, with no immediate task at hand, they move to the foreground, become objects of interest in themselves, become worthy of attention and appreciation. The keeper's breathing continues its slow, steady rhythm, each breath drawn in fully and released completely, without effort or forcing, simply allowing the body to breathe as it knows how to breathe, as it has been breathing since birth, as it will continue to breathe until the end. There is something profound in this simplicity, in the fact that breathing requires no thought, no decision, no conscious control, and yet it is the foundation of life, the most essential activity, the thing without which nothing else is possible. The sound of the waves continues to penetrate the walls, a sound so constant that it has become almost like silence, like the baseline against which all other sounds are measured. The keeper listens to it now with fresh attention, trying to hear it as it might sound to someone encountering it for the first time, trying to perceive its strangeness, its power, its endless repetition that is never quite repetition because each wave is unique, each arrival against the rocks slightly different from every other arrival. The wind, too, is constant, moving around the tower with unwavering persistence, neither increasing nor decreasing, but maintaining the same moderate strength it has held all night. The keeper wonders about the distance this wind has traveled, about where it began its journey, about what lands or waters it passed over before reaching this coast, this lighthouse, this particular moment in time. The wind is ancient, made of air that has circled the earth countless times, that has been breathed by billions of creatures, that has carried rain and seeds and the warmth of the sun from place to place. The keeper moves to the chair by the workbench and sits once more, settling into a posture that can be maintained comfortably for an extended period. The night is not yet over, the watch continues, and there is no reason to stand when sitting serves just as well, no reason to move when stillness is sufficient. The body appreciates this consideration, this respect for its needs and limits, this understanding that efficiency includes the conservation of energy, the avoidance of unnecessary effort. From this seat, the keeper can see the logbook on the table, its pages now closed over the fresh entry, the book resting quietly, its work done for this night. The book is thick, containing months of entries, and beyond it are the previous logbooks, stored safely away, containing years and decades of entries, a paper monument to routine, to attention, to the faithful execution of duty night after night after night. The keeper feels a kinship with those previous entries, with the other keepers who wrote them, with the shared experience of watching light burn in darkness. The lamp flame moves slightly, responding to some subtle current in the air, some minor variation in the draft that flows through the room. The keeper watches the movement, sees how the flame bends and straightens, how it maintains its burning despite the disturbance, how it returns to stability after each perturbation. The flame is resilient, adaptable, persistent, qualities that the keeper has learned to embody, qualities that are necessary for anyone who would tend a lighthouse, who would commit to the work of maintaining light through all conditions, through all circumstances. The keeper's eyelids are heavy now, weighted by the lateness of the hour, by the completion of the tasks, by the deep relaxation that comes from having done everything that needs doing, from having fulfilled all responsibilities, from having brought the watch to its proper conclusion. But the eyes remain open, the mind remains alert, because the watch is not yet over, because the night still requires presence, still needs someone to be aware, to be observant, to be ready should anything occur that demands response or action. The beam sweeps past the window again, its passage marking time, marking the continuation of the light's function, marking the ongoing performance of the lighthouse's purpose. The keeper counts silently, measuring the interval until the beam returns, confirming that the rotation mechanism continues to operate at the correct speed, that nothing has changed, that everything remains as it should be. The count matches the expected interval precisely, and the keeper feels the small satisfaction that comes from this confirmation, from this verification that all is well. Time becomes less distinct now, less measured, less divided into discrete units. The keeper exists in a state between waking and sleeping, conscious but not actively thinking, aware but not focused on any particular object of awareness. This is a state that has become familiar over the years of tending the lighthouse, a state that allows rest while maintaining vigilance, that permits the body to recover while the mind continues its watch, that honors both the need for sleep and the requirements of duty. The lamp on the workbench continues to burn, its flame steady and sure, converting oil to light with the same reliable efficiency it has maintained throughout the night. The keeper watches the flame without focusing on it, sees it without trying to see it, allows it to be present in consciousness without making it an object of attention. The flame simply is, burning because it is given fuel and air, existing in the moment without concern for past or future, without awareness of itself, without anything beyond the pure fact of combustion. The keeper's hands rest in lap, palms upward, fingers slightly curved, completely relaxed. The tension that accumulates through activity, through effort, through the maintenance of posture and the performance of tasks, has drained away, leaving the hands soft and open and still. The keeper can feel the pulse in the fingertips, the gentle throb of blood moving through the small vessels, the rhythm of the heart made visible in this subtle movement. The pulse is steady, calm, reflecting the state of the body, the state of the mind, the state of being that has been achieved through the rituals and routines of the night. Outside, the world continues its existence independent of observation, independent of human attention. The waves roll and break, the wind moves across the water, the stars turn in their courses, all of it happening whether anyone watches or not, whether anyone records it or not, whether anyone cares or not. The universe is indifferent to human concerns, and yet humans persist in observing it, in recording their observations, in trying to understand and document and make sense of what they see. The lighthouse is part of this effort, a small attempt to impose order on chaos, to create reliability in the face of unpredictability, to maintain something constant in a world of constant change. The keeper's breathing slows further, deepens, becomes almost imperceptible. The body is approaching sleep, seeking the rest it needs, but the mind remains just alert enough, just present enough, maintaining the watch even as consciousness dims. This balance between rest and vigilance is delicate, requiring practice to maintain, requiring trust in one's ability to rouse if needed, requiring confidence that awareness will sharpen if circumstances demand it. The keeper has developed this balance over years of practice, has learned to rest while remaining on duty, has mastered the art of the light sleep that allows recovery without abandoning responsibility. The flame wavers again, dances slightly in its glass chimney, and then settles back to steadiness. The oil level in the reservoir has dropped noticeably now, but there is still plenty to last until morning, still hours of burning left before the lamp will need attention. Everything is as it should be, everything is in order, everything is performing its function reliably and well. The keeper's work is done, the entry is written, the checks are complete, and what remains is simply the continuation of presence, the maintenance of watch, the being here while the night slowly turns toward dawn. The keeper's awareness has become diffuse, spread throughout the room rather than focused on any single point. There is the lamp burning, the logbook resting, the walls standing solid, the floor supporting, the ceiling sheltering. All of these elements exist simultaneously in consciousness, none demanding more attention than the others, all simply present, all contributing to the wholeness of the experience of being here, now, in this moment that extends and deepens and seems to have no edges, no boundaries, no clear separation from the moments that came before or those that will follow. The keeper's body has settled completely into the chair, all weight given over to the support of the wood, all muscles released from the work of maintaining posture. The spine curves naturally, the head tilts forward slightly, the shoulders round in a way that would be poor posture for activity, but is perfectly appropriate for this state of deep rest while remaining seated. The body knows how to rest in this position, has done it countless times, has learned through experience how to maintain just enough tone to stay upright while releasing all unnecessary tension. A small sound comes from the lamp mechanism above, a soft click that is part of the normal operation of the clockwork, a sound the keeper has heard so many times that it no longer registers as noteworthy, merely as confirmation that the mechanism continues its work. The click is absorbed into the soundscape of the lighthouse, joining the waves and the wind, and the keeper's breathing, and the slight creaks and groans that old buildings make as they respond to temperature and pressure, and the simple fact of their own weight pressing down upon their foundations. The keeper's mind drifts, not sleeping but not fully awake, moving through a space between states where thoughts arise and dissolve without being pursued, where images appear and fade without being examined, where time itself becomes uncertain, malleable, no longer measured by clocks but by the slower rhythms of breath and heartbeat and the turning of the light above. This is rest of a kind that is hard to find in the ordinary world, where demands and distractions and the pressure of schedules fragment attention and prevent this kind of deep settling. In the lighthouse, in the deep night, with all tasks completed and all systems functioning and nothing requiring immediate attention, this state becomes possible, becomes natural, becomes the default way of being. The keeper has learned not to fight it, not to force wakefulness when the body and mind have arrived at this place of profound rest. The vigilance continues beneath the surface, ready to activate if needed, but for now it can rest, can trust that all is well, can allow consciousness to dim while maintaining just enough awareness to sense any change, any deviation from the expected pattern of sounds and sensations. Time passes, though how much is impossible to say. The keeper exists in a timeless space where minutes and hours lose their meaning, where the only reality is the present moment extending endlessly, containing everything, lacking nothing. The lamp continues to burn, the light continues to turn, the waves continue to arrive, all of it happening in a perpetual now that has no past and no future, only the infinite present in which all things occur. Gradually, without any clear transition, the keeper becomes aware of a change in the quality of the darkness outside. It is not yet light, not even the faintest hint of dawn, but the darkness has somehow shifted, has become less absolute, less impenetrable. Perhaps it is only that the keeper's eyes have adapted more fully to the night, have become more sensitive to the subtle variations in darkness that are always present but usually invisible. Or perhaps the clouds have moved, allowing more starlight through, or the moon has risen, though the keeper has no memory of checking the lunar calendar and cannot say with certainty what phase the moon is in on this particular night. The keeper's eyes open more fully, the lids rising from their half-closed position, and awareness begins to gather itself, to concentrate, to focus once again on the task of observation. The rest has been sufficient. The body has recovered from the exertions of climbing and checking and walking the circuit of the tower, and now it is time to return to fuller wakefulness, to sharper attention, to the active mode of consciousness that proper watchkeeping requires. The keeper stands slowly, allowing blood to redistribute through the body, allowing joints to adjust to the change in position, allowing the muscles to activate gradually rather than suddenly. There is a brief moment of stiffness, a slight resistance to movement, but it passes quickly, and within a few seconds the keeper is standing fully, balanced and steady, ready to move through the room, to perform whatever tasks might be necessary. The first task is to check the lamp on the workbench, to confirm that it continues to burn well, that its oil supply remains adequate, that its flame is clean and steady. The keeper leans close, observing the flame with fresh attention, noting its color, its shape, its movement. Everything is as it should be. The flame burns with the clear, bright light of complete combustion, showing no signs of smoking or sputtering, consuming its fuel efficiently and reliably. The keeper moves to the window and looks out at the night. The beam sweeps past, illuminating the scene for a moment, and in that moment the keeper sees that the clouds have indeed advanced, have covered most of the sky now, leaving only a few patches of clear darkness where stars are still visible. The clouds are higher than they appeared earlier, their undersides catching just the faintest reflection of the lighthouse beam as it passes beneath them, creating a subtle glow that appears and vanishes with each rotation of the light. The ocean is unchanged, still moving in its eternal rhythms, still sending waves against the rocks, still performing the work it has performed for eons and will perform for eons more. The keeper watches a set of larger waves roll in, counts the interval between them, notes their size and power and the height of the spray they produce when they strike the rocks. These are still moderate waves, nothing unusual, nothing that suggests any change in the weather pattern that has held steady throughout the night. The keeper moves to the instruments on the wall and checks them once more. The barometer reading is unchanged, still high and steady, still indicating stable conditions. The thermometer shows a temperature slightly lower than it was earlier in the night, a natural cooling that occurs in the hours before dawn when the Earth has been radiating heat into space for many hours without receiving any in return from the sun. The clock shows that several hours have passed since the logbook entry was written, that the night has progressed significantly toward its conclusion, though dawn is still not imminent. The keeper considers whether to make another circuit of the tower's exterior, to check the conditions outside, to experience directly the wind and the air and the sound of the waves without the filtering presence of walls and windows. But the decision is made to remain inside, to conserve energy, to avoid the small shock of moving from the warm interior to the cold exterior. There is no reason to make the circuit. Everything that could be observed from outside can be observed well enough from the windows, and the keeper's body is content to remain in the warmth, to avoid unnecessary exposure to the elements. Instead, the keeper begins a slow walking of the interior space, moving around the perimeter of the lower room, stretching legs and activating circulation, bringing the body back to fuller wakefulness through gentle movement. The walking is meditative, each step placed carefully and consciously, the foot rolling from heel to toe with deliberate attention to the sensation of contact with the floor, to the shift of weight from one leg to the other, to the gentle swing of arms that accompanies the walking. The keeper completes one circuit of the room and then another, building a slow rhythm, allowing the movement to become automatic while the mind remains quiet, observant, present. This is different from the earlier circuit of the tower's exterior, which was purposeful and directed toward specific observations. This walking is for its own sake, for the simple pleasure of movement, for the reawakening of the body after its period of deep rest. After several circuits, the keeper stops at the table and looks down at the closed logbook. The entry written earlier is hidden now between the pages, but the keeper remembers it clearly, can visualize the neat handwriting, the careful notations, the signature at the bottom that makes it official. There will be another entry to write in the morning, when the light is extinguished and the day begins, when the night's watch is officially concluded and the transition to daytime routines begins. But that is still hours away, still in the future, and for now the night continues, the watch continues, the keeper's vigil continues. The keeper returns to the chair by the workbench and sits once more, assuming the same relaxed posture as before, allowing the body to settle, allowing consciousness to find that same state of relaxed alertness that permits rest while maintaining awareness. The lamp flame dances slightly, responding to the keeper's movement through the room, to the small disturbances in the air that such movement creates, and then it settles back to its steady burning. Outside, the beam continues its sweep, marking time with its passage, dividing the darkness into measured sectors, performing its function with unwavering reliability. The keeper watches through half-closed eyes, sees the periodic brightening and dimming as the beam passes the window, finds comfort in the regularity, in the predictability, in the absolute dependability of the mechanism that produces this repeated pattern. The keeper's breathing falls into rhythm with the sweep of the beam, each breath cycle timed to match the rotation of the light above. It is not a conscious synchronization, but rather something that happens naturally, the body finding harmony with the mechanical rhythm, aligning itself with the largest, most persistent pattern in the environment. The breath flows in as the beam approaches, holds as the beam passes, flows out as the beam moves away, and the cycle begins again, over and over, creating a meditation of breath and light. In this state, the keeper's sense of self begins to dissolve slightly, to become less distinct, less separate from the lighthouse itself. The boundary between observer and observed, between keeper and kept, becomes permeable, uncertain. The keeper is not thinking about the lighthouse, but rather thinking with it, experiencing existence from its perspective, feeling what it might be like to be a tower of stone standing against the wind and waves, burning a light through the darkness, serving a purpose without question or doubt. This is a strange state of consciousness, one that the keeper has experienced before during long watches, during periods of deep solitude when the mind has been quiet for hours and the usual boundaries of identity begin to soften. It is not unpleasant, not disturbing, but rather oddly peaceful, as if some burden of selfhood has been temporarily set aside, some weight of individual identity released. The keeper is still here, still aware, still capable of responding to anything that might require attention, but the sense of being a separate entity, distinct from the environment, has faded somewhat. The lamp flame continues its burning, and the keeper watches it with a kind of intimate understanding, knowing the flame not as an object separate from the self, but as a phenomenon that is somehow shared, somehow mutual, somehow part of the same unified experience that includes the keeper and the lighthouse and the night and the ocean and everything else that exists in this moment. The flame burns because it is fed, and the keeper tends it because that is the keeper's function, and there is no conflict between these things, no separation, only a single process of light being maintained through the cooperation of human and mechanism and fuel. The sound of the waves has become a kind of language, not one that communicates information in the usual sense, but one that speaks directly to some deeper level of awareness, some more fundamental understanding that exists beneath words and concepts. The rhythm of the waves is the rhythm of existence itself, the endless cycle of rising and falling, of beginning and ending, of energy moving through forms and returning to formlessness. The keeper listens to this rhythm and understands it without needing to translate it into thoughts or ideas. Above, in the lamp room, the great lens continues to gather and focus the light, performing its optical magic, bending and concentrating the illumination from the lamp into a beam that reaches miles across the water. The keeper can sense the lens somehow, can feel its presence even without seeing it, can appreciate its function and its beauty, the way it represents human ingenuity applied to the problem of making light travel farther, making it serve more effectively, making it reach those who need it most. Time continues its fluid passage, no longer measured in minutes or hours, but rather in breaths and heartbeats and the rotation of the light. The keeper has lost track of the clock, has stopped consulting it, has surrendered to the timeless quality of the deep night where duration becomes meaningless and only the present moment has reality. This is a gift that the lighthouse offers, this escape from the tyranny of time, this permission to exist in a state where past and future dissolve and only now remains. The keeper's eyes drift to the logbook on the table, seeing it not as a book now but as a record of present moments, each entry a capture of one particular configuration of now, one specific arrangement of wind and weather and light and observation. The logbook is a collection of present moments, strung together like beads on a string, each one complete in itself, and yet part of a larger pattern, a longer story that extends beyond any single night or watch or keeper. The keeper thinks about the person who will read the entry written tonight, whoever that might be, whenever that might occur. Perhaps it will be tomorrow's inspector, checking routine records. Perhaps it will be a future keeper, consulting past entries to understand patterns of weather or sea state. Perhaps it will be a historian, decades or centuries from now, studying the daily life of lighthouse keepers, reconstructing the routines and rhythms of this particular form of work. Whoever it is, they will see the keeper's handwriting, will read the keeper's observations, will know that on this particular night, in this particular place, a light burned and someone watched over it. The keeper finds comfort in this thought, in the idea that the night's work will be preserved, will be knowable, will continue to exist in some form long after the night itself has passed, long after the keeper has moved on to other duties or retired or passed from life entirely. The logbook offers a kind of immortality, limited and imperfect but real nonetheless, a way for the present moment to extend forward through time, to remain accessible, to avoid complete dissolution into the void of forgetting. A slight change in the wind's sound draws the keeper's attention back to the present, back to the immediate reality of the lighthouse and the night. The keeper listens carefully, trying to determine what has changed, whether the shift indicates anything significant or is merely a minor variation in the wind's interaction with the tower. After a moment of focused attention, the keeper determines that the wind has shifted slightly in direction, now coming more from the north than from the west, but that its strength remains unchanged, still moderate, still steady, still well within the range of normal conditions. This shift is noted mentally, filed away for potential inclusion in the next logbook entry, assuming the change persists until morning. The keeper's role is not only to maintain the light, but also to observe, to note, to document the conditions that exist, to create a record that might be useful to others, that might contribute to the larger understanding of weather patterns and sea states along this stretch of coast. Each observation is small, seemingly insignificant in itself, but accumulated over time, over many keepers and many nights, they form a valuable archive of environmental data. The keeper stands again and moves to the window, looking out at the darkness with renewed attention. The beam sweeps past, and in its illumination the keeper can see that the sea surface has changed slightly, the pattern of the waves modified by the shift in wind direction. They are approaching from a slightly different angle now, striking the rocks in a way that produces a different sound, a variation on the theme that has been playing all night. The keeper appreciates this change, welcomes it as a break in the monotony, as a reminder that the night is not static but dynamic, always changing, always offering something new to observe. The clouds have continued their eastward progression, and now only a narrow band of clear sky remains visible to the west, the last refuge of the stars, the final holdout against the advancing overcast. The keeper watches as the beam illuminates the cloud bases, seeing how the light diffuses through the water vapor, creating a soft glow that spreads beyond the focused beam itself. The effect is beautiful, almost magical, transforming the purely functional light into something that seems to have aesthetic purpose, that seems to exist as much for beauty as for utility. The keeper reflects on how often beauty emerges from function, how things designed purely to serve a purpose often possess an elegance, a rightness of form that pleases the eye and satisfies some aesthetic sense. The lighthouse itself is such a thing. Its tapered tower, its efficient use of materials, its honest expression of structure, all of these create a form that is beautiful precisely because it is not trying to be beautiful, because it is simply being what it needs to be to fulfill its function. This thought leads the keeper to consider other examples of functional beauty: the curve of a ship's hull, the arch of a bridge, the proportions of a well-made tool. All of these objects are designed to do something, to serve some purpose, and yet in their purposefulness they achieve a kind of grace, a visual harmony that transcends mere utility. The keeper finds this deeply satisfying, this evidence that beauty and function are not opposed but rather complementary, that serving a purpose well naturally produces forms that please and satisfy. The keeper returns to the chair once more, settling back into the comfortable position, allowing the mind to return to its state of quiet observation. The lamp burns on, the light rotates above, the waves arrive and depart, and the keeper watches over it all with patient attention, with steady presence, with the calm satisfaction that comes from doing what one is meant to do, from being where one is meant to be, from fulfilling the role that has been given and accepted. The night deepens further, though dawn is now closer than it was, moving slowly but inevitably toward its moment of arrival. The keeper does not anticipate it, does not wish for it, but simply acknowledges its approach, accepts its inevitability, prepares mentally for the transition from night duties to day duties, from the maintenance of light to its extinguishing, from watching darkness to greeting dawn. But that transition is still ahead, still in the future, and for now the night continues, deep and dark and full of the presence of the lighthouse and the keeper who tends it. The keeper's awareness settles into an even deeper state of quietness, a stillness that seems to emanate from the very stones of the lighthouse itself. In this state, the keeper becomes intensely aware of the smallest details. The way the lamp flame creates tiny shadows that dance across the curved surface of the glass chimney, the almost imperceptible vibration that travels through the floor when a particularly large wave strikes the rocks below, the faint smell of oil and salt and old wood that defines the atmosphere of the lower room. Each sensation is received without judgment, without analysis, simply accepted as it arrives and allowed to pass when it moves on. The keeper has learned this way of being through countless nights of watching, through the patient accumulation of hours spent in this state of relaxed attention. It is a skill, though not one that can be taught directly, only one that emerges gradually through practice, through the willingness to sit quietly and observe, through the patience to wait without knowing what one is waiting for. The wind continues its passage around the tower, and the keeper notices how its sound changes subtly depending on which part of the tower it is encountering, how it creates different tones and resonances as it moves past windows and doors and the irregular surfaces of weathered stone. The wind is playing the lighthouse like a complex instrument, drawing music from its structure, creating a composition that is unique to this particular tower, this particular configuration of openings and obstacles, this particular geometry of stone and air. The keeper listens to this music without trying to understand it, without attempting to predict its patterns or analyze its components, simply allowing it to exist as sound, as vibration in the air, as waves of pressure that strike the ear and create the experience of hearing. There is something deeply restful in this kind of listening, in receiving sound without trying to interpret it, in allowing it to be what it is without imposing meaning or seeking pattern. Above, the rotation mechanism continues its work with mechanical precision, the gears turning, the weights descending, the lens assembly sweeping through its arc with the same steady speed it has maintained all night. The keeper can sense the mechanism's contentment, if such a thing can be attributed to machinery, the satisfaction of a system operating within its designed parameters, performing its function without strain or stress, doing exactly what it was made to do. The keeper's body has achieved a state of complete relaxation now, every muscle released from tension, every joint resting in its neutral position, all weight given over to the support of the chair and the floor beneath. In this state, the body almost disappears from awareness, no longer sending signals of discomfort or need, no longer demanding attention or adjustment. What remains is a kind of pure consciousness, awareness without an obvious center, perception without a clear perceiver. The lamp flame wavers slightly, and the keeper's attention moves to it without effort, without the sense of having chosen to look. The flame is mesmerizing in its simplicity, in its straightforward conversion of fuel to light, in its absolute commitment to burning as long as oil and air are provided. There is something admirable in this single-mindedness, in the flame's complete lack of ambiguity or doubt, in its pure expression of what it is. The keeper notices how the light from the flame reflects off various surfaces in the room. The glass of the window, the brass fittings of the lamp itself, the polished wood of the table where the logbook rests. Each reflection is slightly different, colored by the properties of the reflecting surface, modified by the angle of incidence, transformed in some way even as it remains recognizably the same light. The keeper contemplates this multiplication of light, this way that a single flame can exist in many places simultaneously through reflection, through the bouncing of photons from surface to surface. Outside, the clouds have nearly completed their conquest of the sky, leaving only the smallest patch of stars visible to the west. The keeper watches as this last clear area slowly diminishes, as the cloud edge advances steadily eastward, consuming star after star, replacing the bright points with a uniform darkness that is somehow different from the darkness of clear night sky. The clouds are not black but rather a deep gray, faintly luminous with the collective glow of starlight scattered through their mass. The beam sweeps through the clouds, and the keeper sees again the way it creates visible columns of light, the way it renders the normally invisible beam apparent through its interaction with the water droplets suspended in the air. This visible beam is somehow more satisfying than the usual invisible one, more tangible, more present, offering visual confirmation of what is normally only inferred, only known through its effects rather than through direct perception. The keeper rises once more from the chair, feeling the need for movement, for a change in position, for the gentle activity of walking. The circuit of the room begins again, slow steps that carry the keeper along the perimeter, past the workbench and the cabinet and the stove and the table, a loop that brings the keeper back to the starting point, and then continues, establishing a rhythm, creating a moving meditation. As the keeper walks, attention flows from one object to another, from one part of the room to another, never settling anywhere for long, never grasping or holding, simply moving like water, like wind, like the beam of light above that sweeps continuously across its appointed sectors. This flowing attention is restful despite the movement, is meditative despite the change, is peaceful despite the activity. The keeper pauses at the table and places a hand on the closed logbook, feeling its weight, its solidity, its substantial presence. The book is heavy with entries, with accumulated nights, with the layered documentation of watch after watch after watch. The keeper imagines all the other logbooks that exist in the world, in all the other lighthouses that stand along all the coasts, each one recording its own sequence of nights, its own weather patterns, its own observations. Together they form a vast archive of vigilance, a global record of lights maintained through darkness. The keeper continues walking, completing another circuit of the room, and then another, the movement becoming automatic, the body following the path without requiring conscious direction. In this state, walking and standing still feel almost the same, as if the movement is not really movement, but rather a kind of stillness that happens to include motion, a rest that incorporates activity without losing its essential quality of peace. The lamp on the workbench has burned down further now, its flame slightly smaller, its reservoir of oil noticeably lower. The keeper makes a mental note to check it again soon, to ensure that it has sufficient fuel to last until morning, to avoid the possibility of it burning out before the watch is complete. But for now it burns well, providing more than enough light for the room, illuminating the space with its warm, steady glow. The keeper stops walking and stands in the center of the room, feet shoulder-width apart, arms hanging loosely at sides, head balanced easily atop the spine. This standing is different from ordinary standing, is more like a rooted stillness, a connection with the floor beneath and through it with the rock beneath and through that with the earth itself. The keeper breathes slowly, feeling the air enter and leave the body, feeling the slight expansion and contraction of the chest, feeling the life that flows through the act of respiration. In this moment of standing stillness, the keeper becomes acutely aware of the lighthouse as a living thing, not living in the biological sense, but living nonetheless, animated by its function, given purpose and meaning by the light it maintains, by the service it provides. The lighthouse breathes with the wind that moves around it, beats with the waves that strike it, burns with the flame that glows within it. It is alive in the way that all purposeful things are alive, all things that serve and persist and continue through time. The keeper's meditation is broken by a sound from above, a slight change in the rhythm of the rotation mechanism, a barely perceptible variation that most people would not notice, but that the keeper, attuned to every aspect of the lighthouse's operation, recognizes immediately. The keeper's attention sharpens, focuses, directs itself toward the sound, analyzing it, trying to determine its source and significance. After a moment of careful listening, the keeper determines that the sound is nothing to be concerned about, merely a slight adjustment as the mechanism takes up a minuscule amount of slack in one of the cables, a normal occurrence that happens occasionally and indicates healthy operation rather than malfunction. The keeper's attention relaxes again, releases its focus, returns to the broader, softer awareness that has characterized most of the night. The keeper moves to the window once more and looks out at the night, at the darkness that is now almost complete, the last stars having been covered by the advancing clouds. The darkness is uniform now, unbroken by any celestial light, dependent entirely on the lighthouse beam for visibility. The keeper watches the beam sweep past, sees how it illuminates the clouds from below, creating a soft glow that seems to emanate from the clouds themselves rather than from the lighthouse, as if the sky has become luminous, as if the clouds have learned to generate light. The wind has steadied at its new direction, now firmly from the north, bringing with it air that is slightly cooler, slightly drier, carrying the scent of land rather than the pure ocean smell that characterized the earlier west wind. The keeper notes this change, appreciates the variation it brings, welcomes the different quality of air that flows around the tower now. Each wind direction has its own character, its own personality, and the keeper has learned to recognize them, to anticipate their effects, to understand what each one means for the lighthouse and its operation. The keeper remains at the window for a long while, allowing the subtle change in the air to register fully. The northern wind has a steadier quality now, less variable than the earlier breeze, moving with quiet confidence around the tower. It presses gently against the stone, flows along the edges of the structure, and then moves on, continuing its unseen journey across the land and sea. The keeper feels no need to label the moment, no need to capture it in words or record it in the logbook. Some experiences belong only to awareness itself, complete without documentation. The beam continues its patient rotation, passing through the cloud cover with unwavering consistency. Each sweep is identical to the last, yet each feels slightly different, shaped by the constantly shifting texture of the air and the subtle variations in the cloud's density. The keeper observes how the light softens as it meets thicker patches, how it sharpens again where the cloud thins, how it leaves behind no trace once it has passed. The light performs its duty and then moves on, unconcerned with permanence. After a time, the keeper turns away from the window and returns to the table. The logbook waits there, closed and heavy, its cover smooth beneath the keeper's fingertips. There is no urgency to open it yet. The final entry will be made later, closer to morning, when the night has given everything it has to give. For now, the book remains silent, content to rest. The keeper moves to the workbench and checks the lamp once more, lifting the reservoir slightly to gauge its weight. There is ample oil still, enough to carry the flame well into the coming hours. Satisfied, The keeper lowers it back into place, adjusting the wick with careful precision. The flame responds immediately, settling into a steady, confident burn, neither too high nor too low. It is a small act, almost insignificant, yet it brings a quiet sense of completion, a reassurance that all is being tended as it should be. The room feels especially still now. Even the wind seems to pause between breaths, leaving a silence so complete that it becomes almost tangible, like a soft presence filling the space. In this silence, the keeper can hear the faintest sounds, the subtle expansion of metal as temperatures shift, the distant hush of waves far below, the barely audible whisper of air moving through tiny gaps in the stonework. These sounds do not intrude upon the quiet, they belong to it. The keeper returns to the chair and sits once more, allowing the body to settle naturally. There is no stiffness, no restlessness. The long hours of watchfulness have carried the body into a state of ease, a familiarity with stillness that feels earned rather than imposed. The chair supports without demanding adjustment, and the floor beneath seems solid and dependable, a reminder of the enduring rock upon which the lighthouse stands. Time passes without announcement. The clock continues its steady progression, but the keeper does not look at it. The precise hour feels unimportant now. What matters is the continuity of the watch, the unbroken presence that has carried the keeper through the night and will carry the light safely toward morning. The keeper's awareness widens again, encompassing the tower, the sea, the clouds, and the unseen horizon beyond. There is a sense of belonging in this widening, a feeling of being exactly where one is meant to be, doing exactly what needs to be done by simply remaining present. The lighthouse stands firm, the light turns, the sea moves in its ancient rhythm, and the night continues to unfold at its own gentle pace. Nothing is required of this moment beyond attention, and attention offered quietly is enough. The keeper remains seated, breathing slowly, evenly, the rhythm so gentle it scarcely seems like movement at all. The night has settled into its deepest calm now, the kind of stillness that comes only in the final hours before morning, when the world seems to pause and gather itself before the day begins again. The lighthouse continues its quiet work without interruption. Above, the mechanism turns with patient certainty, each rotation identical to the last, each sweep of light moving through darkness with calm assurance. The keeper senses the turning rather than hearing it, a steady presence that requires no attention, yet offers constant reassurance. The light does not hurry. It does not hesitate. It simply continues. Outside, the clouds move slowly across the sky, their shapes changing so gradually that the movement is almost impossible to perceive unless watched for a long time. They drift like thoughts passing through a resting mind, forming and dissolving without urgency. The beam touches them briefly, and then moves on, leaving them unchanged, unmarked. The keeper's thoughts grow fewer now, spacing themselves farther apart, leaving wide stretches of quiet awareness between them. There is no effort to control this settling. It happens naturally, the way a stirred pond eventually returns to stillness once the movement stops. The night itself seems to encourage this ease, offering no demands, no interruptions. The air inside the lighthouse feels slightly cooler than before, carrying the subtle promise of approaching dawn. The keeper notices the change without reacting to it, allowing it to register and then fade into the background of awareness. Morning will come in its own time. There is no need to anticipate it. The keeper rises once more, not from restlessness but from habit, and walks slowly to the window. The darkness beyond is complete now, the sea and sky blending together into a single vast expanse. Only the light provides definition, briefly revealing clouds, mist, and distant rain far out over the water. The keeper watches the beam pass and then vanish, watches it return again, each cycle steady and dependable. There is comfort in this repetition, in the certainty that nothing unexpected is required. The lighthouse stands, the light turns, the keeper watches. This simple arrangement has endured through countless nights, through changing weather and seasons, through years that come and go without leaving a mark on the stone walls or the steady machinery. The keeper steps back from the window and returns to the table. The logbook is opened at last, the final entry prepared. The pen moves slowly, deliberately, recording the essential facts: the weather, the visibility, the steady operation of the light. The words are neat and unhurried, each letter formed with quiet care. When the entry is complete, the keeper closes the book gently, resting a hand on its cover for a moment longer than necessary. The task finished, the keeper returns the pen to its place and sits once more. The room feels complete now, settled, as though everything has been gently aligned. The lamp burns steadily, the lighthouse works without fault, and the night holds its calm. The keeper allows the body to rest fully, supported by the chair, supported by the tower, supported by the solid earth beneath. There is nothing left to adjust, nothing left to check. The watch continues, but it requires no effort now, only presence. The beam sweeps on. The waves move below. The wind passes softly around the stone. And within the lighthouse, all is quiet, steady, and at rest.